Trauma doesn't always show up as broken bones or bleeding wounds. Sometimes, it looks like a person who shuts down when conflict happens. Someone who gets angry too fast and regrets it later. Someone who keeps overthinking, who freezes when making decisions, who feels disconnected from their own life, or who cannot understand why certain situations trigger panic or shame. Trauma often hides behind procrastination, anxiety, emotional numbness, chronic fatigue, or a constant need to stay busy so the mind doesn't have to feel. And yet, most people walk through life believing something is wrong with them, instead of realizing that their body has been carrying old pain for years. Emotional injuries buried long ago continue shaping how you think, react, love, trust, and live today. You might not remember what happened, but your body never forgot. This is the book that finally explains why. Welcome to Top Summary, where you learn from successful people, transform your life, and see your growth unfold. If you're new here, we bring you inspiring book summaries and practical lessons to help you grow faster and live better. In this audiobook, we explore Bessel van der Kolk's groundbreaking work, The Body Keeps the Score, a book that changed the world's understanding of trauma. It explains why traumatic experiences don't just live in memory. They live in your muscles, your breath, your heartbeat, your stress levels, your relationships, and your sense of safety. The author, Dr. van der Kolk, is one of the world's leading trauma researchers. For more than 40 years, he studied war veterans, victims of abuse, neglected children, people suffering after accidents, violence, loss, and emotional wounds that seemed invisible to others. And through this lifelong work, he discovered a truth that changed psychology forever. Trauma reshapes both the body and brain. It alters the way you process emotions, the way you see the world, and the way you see yourself. Why does this book matter today? Because we live in a world where nearly everyone carries some form of trauma, childhood criticism that made you feel never enough, emotional neglect that made you stop expressing your feelings, a toxic relationship that shattered your sense of trust, or a sudden painful event that your mind has never fully processed. And when trauma stays unhealed, it turns into patterns, emotional reactivity, withdrawal, self-blame, fear of intimacy, addiction, perfectionism, or the constant sense that life requires too much effort. This book teaches that healing is possible, not by ignoring the pain, but by understanding how deeply it lives inside you. And more importantly, how to reclaim your body, your mind, and your sense of safety. Dr. van der Kolk begins by explaining something surprising. Trauma is not just about what happened. Trauma is about what your body had to do to survive when it happened. It's the unfinished response, the fight, flight, freeze, or collapse that got stuck inside you. That survival energy, trapped in your nervous system, becomes tension, fear, hypervigilance, or emotional numbness later in life. Think of someone who jumps at sudden noises, avoids certain people or situations without knowing why, or gets overwhelmed by emotions that feel too big to handle. These reactions are not personality flaws. They are the echoes of moments when the body felt unsafe. The author observed that the mind can tell a story, but the body tells the truth. Memories may blur, but the heart rate remembers the fear. The stomach remembers the knot. The muscles remember the tension. The breath remembers the moment it got stuck. Trauma lives in sensations long before it becomes thoughts. This understanding leads to a powerful insight. You cannot talk your way out of trauma. Logical thinking, affirmations, or positive motivation often fail because trauma isn't stored in the thinking brain. It's stored in the survival brain, the subconscious systems that control your breath, your heartbeat, your gut, your reflexes, and your stress responses. That's why people sometimes say, "I know I'm safe, but my body doesn't feel safe." Their brain understands reality, but their body is still living in the past. Imagine someone who grew up in a chaotic home. Now, even in a peaceful environment, their nervous system stays on high alert, scanning for danger, anticipating rejection, bracing for conflict. Or someone who experienced betrayal, now struggling to trust even genuinely kind people. The body learned a lesson once, and it keeps repeating it, trying to protect you. The author shows that trauma changes the brain's three major parts: the rational brain, the emotional brain, and the instinctive survival brain. When trauma takes hold, the survival brain becomes overactive while the rational brain shuts down during stress. This is why people feel overwhelmed, panicked, or numb even when nothing is wrong. Their brain has learned to overreact in order to stay alive. And this understanding leads to one of the book's most empowering ideas. Trauma is a past experience that keeps replaying in the present. Healing means teaching the body that the danger is gone. But how do we do that? The first step is awareness. Learning to notice what happens inside your body without judging it. This is harder than it sounds because trauma disconnects people from their inner world. Many survivors live outside themselves. In work, distractions, business, caretaking, or anything that keeps them from feeling. They often say, "I don't know what I feel," or "everything feels numb," or "I can't slow down." The author explains that this disconnection is not a weakness. It is a survival mechanism. When emotions were too painful, the body shut them down to protect you. But what once protected you now prevents you from healing. To reconnect, the author emphasizes the importance of noticing physical sensations. The tightness in your chest when someone raises their voice, the sinking feeling in your stomach when you fear rejection, the heat in your body when you get angry, or the numbness when you feel overwhelmed. These sensations are the language of trauma. Learning to observe them helps you understand your nervous system and reclaim control. One example the author shares is how veterans or abuse survivors relive trauma through flashbacks or sudden emotional storms. Their brain misinterprets a harmless moment as a threat because old memories are stored in fragments, not as stories, but as raw sensory experiences. A sound, a smell, a tone, a posture, a touch. That fragment ignites the full-body survival response. Understanding this brings compassion to yourself. You're not overreacting. Your body is trying to protect you from something it once couldn't escape. And the author wants listeners to know something deeply important. Healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about teaching your brain and body new patterns so they no longer react as if the trauma is happening again. The book introduces groundbreaking research showing that trauma reshapes how the brain wires itself. But it also shows that the brain can change through practices that help people regain a sense of safety and control. Some of the early insights include how touch, movement, breath, and mindfulness can calm the survival brain. Trauma makes the body feel unsafe, so healing must begin by making the body feel safe again. This can happen through grounding exercises, yoga, deep breathing, and anything that helps the mind reconnect with the body without fear. For example, simply taking a slow breath and feeling your feet on the floor can interrupt the survival response. Or gently placing your hand on your heart and noticing the warmth can signal safety to your nervous system. These small practices begin rewiring the brain. The author also explains how trauma affects relationships. Because trauma damages the ability to trust, connect, and feel seen. People who grow up feeling unsafe often develop patterns of either clinging too tightly or staying distant from others. They fear abandonment or intimacy, sometimes both. This emotional unpredictability is not because they don't want love, but because their body learned that closeness can hurt. Understanding this relieves so much shame. It reminds you that your reactions are rooted in old pain, not in failure. The first part of the book leaves listeners with one essential idea. Trauma doesn't define you. It is an experience stored in your body, And with the right tools, it can be released. Your brain can learn new patterns. Your body can feel safe again. And your future doesn't have to repeat your past. As we move deeper into Dr. Van der Kolk's work, the book shifts into the science of how trauma rewires the brain. And this isn't just abstract neuroscience. It's the foundation of understanding why certain reactions feel uncontrollable, why some memories feel sharper than they should, and why certain emotions take over even when you logically know they shouldn't. The author explains that the brain has three main systems involved in trauma: the rational brain, the emotional brain, and the survival brain. The rational brain helps you think, plan, and make sense of things. The emotional brain helps you interpret experiences and form relationships. And the survival brain keeps you alive by triggering fight, flight, freeze, or collapse responses. In trauma, the survival brain becomes too powerful, while the rational brain becomes too weak in moments of stress. This is why a simple argument can make someone shut down, tremble, or explode. The survival brain hijacks the entire system, pushing logic aside. It's not a conscious choice, it's biology. Trauma literally makes the brain treat certain situations as life-threatening, even when they aren't. To understand this, think of someone who grew up in a home where yelling meant danger. Now imagine this person as an adult, sitting in a meeting at work. A colleague raises their voice slightly. Immediately, their heart races, their stomach tightens, their mind goes blank. They want to respond logically, but they can't. Their body has already launched into defense mode. This isn't immaturity or weakness. It is the mind-body memory of danger. The book reveals that trauma survivors often feel ashamed of these reactions because they don't understand where they come from. But the truth is, the brain is simply doing what it learned to do: protect you. Once you see this, healing becomes less about judging yourself and more about learning how to regulate those automatic reactions. Dr. Van der Kolk discusses how trauma also disrupts the connection between the emotional brain and the thinking brain. This disconnect makes people struggle with emotional regulation. Sometimes they feel too much, overwhelmed by anger, sadness, or fear. Other times they feel nothing at all, emotionally numb, disconnected, or frozen. This emotional imbalance affects everyday life. Someone might get irritated easily, feel exhausted after small social interactions, avoid conflicts out of fear, or completely shut down when faced with stress. The author emphasizes that these patterns are not personality traits. They are trauma responses. But the book doesn't stop at explanation. It shows pathways to healing. One of the most transformative ideas the author introduces is body awareness, also known as interoception. Trauma distorts your ability to sense what's happening inside your own body. People often disconnect from their breath, their heartbeat, their hunger cues, their feelings, or their internal energy. They might say things like, "I don't feel anything," or "I don't know what I feel," or "I can't stay still." The author explains that this numbness is actually the body's survival strategy. When overwhelming emotions become too painful to feel, the body shuts them down. But healing requires slowly reconnecting with these sensations. The book shows fascinating cases where patients learn to observe their physical sensations without fear. Noticing their breath, the tension in their shoulders, or the flutter in their stomach, and how this awareness slowly rebuilds the capacity to feel safe inside their own body. One simple practice is grounding, placing your feet on the floor, noticing the weight of your body, or feeling your breath move in and out. These practices teach the brain that the present moment is safe. Over time, the survival brain relaxes. The author also explores the power of mindfulness. Not the modern productivity version, but the deeper, therapeutic kind, a way of watching your sensations and emotions without immediately reacting to them. When someone practices this consistently, they begin to catch the early signs of being triggered. They notice their breath speeding up, or their chest tightening, or their thoughts racing. And that awareness creates a small space, a moment of choice. In that space, healing begins. The book then dives into memory, specifically how traumatic memories differ from normal memories. Normal memories are stored like a story. You know what happened, when it happened, and how it connects to your life. Traumatic memories are stored as fragments, a smell, a sound, a posture, a feeling. They often return unexpectedly, without context. That's why trauma survivors sometimes relive old moments as if they are happening right now. This is not imagination. It's how the brain stored the experience. For example, a veteran may hear fireworks and instantly feel panic, even though they consciously know they are safe. Or a person who experienced emotional abuse may feel intense dread when someone uses a certain tone of voice. Trauma makes the brain confuse reminders with the original danger. The author calls this time collapse. The body reacts as if the past is still present. Healing involves helping the brain reorganize those memories, giving them narrative structure, and teaching the body to separate then from now. Therapy modalities like EMDR, neurofeedback, and trauma-informed talk therapy help the brain process those memories so they no longer hijack the nervous system. As the book progresses, Dr. Van der Kolk shifts from understanding trauma to showing how connection and relationships play a crucial role in healing. Human beings are wired for attachment, to feel safe through presence, touch, eye contact, and attunement. Trauma often damages these bonds, leaving people feeling isolated, mistrustful, or hypervigilant in relationships. Many trauma survivors fear intimacy without knowing why. They struggle to let people in. They fear abandonment, judgment, or being misunderstood. They may also cling too tightly, seeking reassurance because their survival brain believes that loneliness equals danger. These patterns create emotional exhaustion in relationships. The author emphasizes that healing requires safe connection, with yourself first and eventually with others. When someone feels truly seen and understood, their nervous system calms. When they feel judged or rejected, it becomes agitated. This is why therapy works, not just because of techniques, but because of the relational safety between the therapist and the patient. At this point in the audiobook, we move to one of the most important transitions. If you enjoy our top summaries and storytelling, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this with someone who might need it today. We've got some bonus action items for you at the end, so keep listening. Now, let's get back to the summary. The author now introduces transformative healing methods that go beyond talk therapy. Trauma isn't stored in words. It's stored in sensations and reflexes. So healing must involve the body. One method he highlights is yoga. Not as exercise, but as controlled movement and breath. Trauma survivors often feel unsafe inside their bodies because they associate physical sensations with danger. Yoga helps them slowly reclaim their body by moving gently, holding poses, and noticing sensations without fear. The slow breathwork activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural relaxation system, which teaches the brain that it's safe to calm down. The author shares cases where people who had been dissociated for years began feeling connected again through these practices. Instead of escaping their body, they began occupying it. Another method is neurofeedback. This technology helps the brain rewire itself by showing how its electrical patterns behave. People learn to regulate their brain waves, strengthening focus, calmness, and emotional stability. It can reduce nightmares, panic attacks, impulsivity, and mood swings. Neurofeedback doesn't rely on talking. It relies on training the brain to function in healthier patterns. The book also covers EMDR, a powerful trauma therapy that uses bilateral stimulation, like eye movements or tapping, to help the brain process traumatic memories. It allows those memories to be integrated instead of staying stuck as emotional fragments. EMDR has helped many people reduce the emotional charge of traumatic events. What's important here is that the author never promotes a single method. Instead, he presents a toolkit because trauma is personal and healing is not one size fits all. The core message is this: for trauma to heal, the body must feel safe again. Without physical safety, internal or external, emotional healing becomes almost impossible. Dr. Van der Kolk also describes how trauma impacts the sense of self. Many survivors feel like spectators of their own life. They say things like, "I feel empty," or "I don't know who I am," or "I feel like something is missing." Trauma disrupts the inner compass, the ability to understand your feelings, wants, and boundaries. Instead of feeling, they function. They survive. They adapt. But through body-based therapies, mindfulness, movement, safe relationships, and proper therapeutic support, people slowly reconnect with that inner compass. They begin making choices based not on fear, but on genuine desire. They start living instead of just surviving. The author's stories demonstrate this shift repeatedly, not through dramatic transformations, but through small victories. Someone taking a deeper breath. Someone relaxing their shoulders. Someone crying for the first time in years. Someone setting a boundary. Someone realizing they deserve peace. These small changes mark the return of selfhood. This part of the book reminds listeners that trauma recovery is not about becoming who you were before. It's about becoming someone stronger, more aware, and more connected than before. Someone who understands their mind, respects their body, and knows they deserve safety. As we move into the final part of The Body Keeps the Score, the book shifts from understanding trauma to reclaiming your life from it. Dr. Van der Kolk shows that trauma recovery is not about erasing memories or pretending the past didn't happen. It's about giving your body and mind a new experience of safety, presence, and connection. He explains that healing begins when the body no longer reacts to the past as if it's still happening. When your breath starts to flow again. When your muscles begin to relax. When your mind stops expecting danger. When you no longer feel trapped by old feelings and can finally feel the world around you. The sunlight, the sound of someone's voice, the warmth of your own emotions. This transition from survival to living happens slowly through repeated experiences of safety. The author talks about how trauma survivors often carry deep shame. Shame for their reactions, their outbursts, their shutdowns, their inability to cope, normally, their neediness or numbness, their hypervigilance or avoidance. But he makes it clear, these reactions are not character flaws. They are the body's attempts to protect itself. Once you understand this, compassion replaces shame. And compassion is one of the strongest medicines for trauma. Dr. Van der Kolk emphasizes that trauma isolates. It convinces you that no one will understand, that your feelings are too much, that your pain is a burden. But healing requires connection, with supportive people, with your own body, and with your inner self. He shows how shared experiences, like group therapy, community activities, movement-based classes, or even simple connection with friends, can help the nervous system reset. Humans regulate each other. When you feel connected, your body feels safer. When you feel safe, your brain heals faster. He describes powerful moments when trauma survivors begin experiencing joy again, not forced happiness, but authentic joy, the kind that arrives quietly. A moment of laughter that doesn't feel heavy. A moment of calm where your mind is no longer racing. A moment where you feel present instead of trapped in the past. These moments signal the return of aliveness. One of the most moving insights in the book is the idea of ownership of the body. Trauma steals ownership. You stop feeling in control of your reactions, your emotions, and sometimes even your physical presence. But as you heal, you begin reclaiming your body. You breathe deeper. You move more openly. You feel more connected. You stop apologizing for your feelings. You start trusting your intuition again. This is what healing looks like, not perfection, but presence. The author also explores how creativity helps the brain process trauma in ways words cannot. Activities like drawing, dancing, music, writing, or mindful movement activate the parts of the brain that trauma often shuts down. Creativity opens pathways for expression that feel safe and nonverbal. When people engage in creative activities, they often discover feelings or memories they couldn't express before, and they process them in a healthy way. Another powerful insight is the importance of safe touch. Trauma often disrupts a person's relationship with physical contact. Safe, respectful, non-threatening touch helps regulate the nervous system. This is why practices like massage, somatic therapy, or even comforting hugs can help people feel grounded and connected. For many survivors, physical safety is the doorway to emotional safety. Dr. Van der Kolk also talks about the difference between being calm and being controlled. Many trauma survivors appear calm on the outside because they learn to shut down their emotions. But shutting down isn't healing. It's another form of survival. True calmness is when your body feels relaxed, your breath flows naturally, and your emotions feel manageable instead of overwhelming or suppressed. Healing means learning not just to manage your emotions, but to feel them safely. As the book nears its conclusion, the author stresses something deeply important. Trauma recovery requires patience. There is no fixed timeline. Some days will feel light and freeing. Others will feel heavy and confusing. But this is normal. Healing is not linear. It's a gradual rebalancing of the mind and body. He reminds readers that the goal is not to eliminate all triggers, but to build the capacity to respond to them with awareness instead of fear. To notice the tension, breathe through it, and remind your body that the danger is over. Over time, this rewires the brain, restoring resilience and flexibility. He also highlights that no single method is enough on its own. Healing is a combination of awareness, body-based practices, thoughtful therapy, supportive relationships, and a willingness to show up for yourself consistently. The author encourages survivors to explore different methods until they find what works. Yoga, EMDR, neurofeedback, mindful breathing, creative expression, or trauma-informed therapy. As we approach the end of this audiobook, let's revisit the emotional heart of the book. The body keeps the score, but it also holds the key to healing. Your body is not your enemy. It protected you when you had no other choice. Now, it needs guidance, patience, and safety to release what it once held so tightly. Dr. Van der Kolk's work teaches that healing is possible for everyone, even those who feel broken, numb, or overwhelmed. The brain can change. The body can heal. Your identity can grow beyond your trauma. You can create a new relationship with your feelings, your memories, your relationships, and your future. In the final moments of the book, the author offers hope. Deep, genuine hope. Not the kind that promises quick fixes, but the kind that grows through understanding and self-awareness. He reminds us that trauma does not define who you are, it only explains what you've been through. And with the right support, your life can expand far beyond the boundaries that trauma created. Now, as we close this summary, here are some bonus action items inspired by the book, practical ways you can begin healing or supporting someone who is healing. Start by building simple body awareness. Take a few times during the day to stop and notice your breath. Feel the rise and fall of your chest. Feel your feet touching the ground. Sense the tension in your shoulders. These small acts teach your body that it is safe to feel again. Try mindful movement, even gentle stretching, walking slowly, or simple yoga postures. These practices reconnect your mind with your body and reduce the power of triggers. Focus on consistent routines that support emotional regulation, enough sleep, gentle exercise, mindful breathing, and breaks from overstimulation. Trauma-sensitive living is not about force. It's about compassion and steadiness. Seek connection. Share your experiences with someone you trust. Healthy, safe relationships are medicine for the nervous system. Explore creative outlets. Draw, write, dance, paint, anything that allows you to express your internal world without pressure. If you feel ready, work with a trauma-informed therapist. Modalities like EMDR, somatic therapy, neurofeedback, and trauma-focused psychotherapy can help you process and reorganize difficult memories. Most importantly, remind yourself regularly that healing is not about rushing. It's about learning to feel alive again. Every gentle breath, every small moment of safety, every step toward awareness is progress. Your body is your history, but it is also your opportunity for transformation. That's all for today. We'll continue bringing you top book summaries that inspire change and reflection. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep transforming. Transform your thoughts. Transform your life.